Hi everybody, and welcome back to my kitchen. Boy, it smells great in here because I'm frying bacon. So today on the menu, it is tortas de huevo con tocino, or a bacon and egg torta. Who doesn't love a breakfast sandwich? These, well, I will say, are everybody's everyday favorites in Mexico, and I'm going to step you through how to get that great Mexican flavor for your breakfast sandwiches. Okay, so I've got, in a couple of batches, fried up all of the bacon that we're going to be using here. I'm going to pour off all but a couple of tablespoons of the bacon fat. Okay. And leaving that in the pan, I'm going to go puree some beans. But before I puree the beans, I'm going to take a whole can of chipotles. This is going to be one of the flavors in this torta. And I'm going to let that run until we have basically a puree, because that is what we're going to use to season one side of the bread here. We're using the classic telera bread that you can find at your Mexican bakeries, or I have a whole tutorial on how to make them yourself. Lacking that, maybe you want to use like a ciabatta roll or something like that would work fine for this. Okay, so now we've got our puree of this. I'm going to put it just back into the little can here. Scrape it back in there because I'm going to leave some of the chipotle to flavor the beans that we're going to puree next here. I don't want to leave too much of it here, but a nice little seasoning will go on the bread, and it'll take about, I'd say, a couple teaspoons per. Okay, so we'll put that back on here and put in some cooked black beans. You can use home-cooked black beans. You could use the canned black beans for this. Top goes on, and we're going to puree those guys. And I want them to have a little bit of texture still left in them because that's what I like. But if you like them to be completely smooth, that's up to you. Okay, next step here will be to scrape these guys into the fat that we have left over here from cooking the bacon. It should sizzle nicely when it goes in. And what we're going to get here is like, let's call it a black bean spread to go over one side of each of these breakfast sandwich rolls. Okay, just stir that around. This won't take much time to cook down to that kind of paste, but I'm scraping up all the residue that is left from cooking the bacon. That's the good stuff. That's where you get all that beautiful flavor. Okay, now I'll just set this guy behind me here. This is going to cool off a little bit and thicken up. I can see that these beans, by the way, were already seasoned, so I'm just going to move them to the back here, and we'll leave them there until we're ready to use them. And then on the front here, I'm going to, in a non-stick pan, because I just find it easier to cook eggs in a non-stick pan, I'm going to cut off a little bit of butter here, about 3 tablespoons or so, and put that into our pan. Now, I'm making enough for 6 sandwiches here, so a whole dozen eggs is what I'm working with. We'll let that be over there. I cracked the eggs into this bowl, and I'm going to whisk them until the streaky bits of yellow and white are almost all gone. And then add to that 3/4 of a cup of heavy cream. I just think if you're going to make these kinds of breakfast sandwiches, you're probably doing it for a kind of special occasion. So the cream will make these really both resilient and really beautifully rich and creamy. I said 3/4 of a cup of cream, but what I really meant was a half a cup of cream. But maybe I was just thinking about what I really wanted. You can use as much as 3/4 of a cup there, and it will make those eggs incredibly creamy. Now, for the salt for this, for a dozen eggs, I would do 2 teaspoons of salt. I think under-seasoned eggs are really a travesty. They're super hard. They're super disappointing, I think. So now we've got all of that. Now I'm going to turn up the temperature here underneath this pan of almost melted butter. And to get more flavor in the eggs, I like to brown the butter just a tiny bit. So when this gets brown around the edges, not fully what we would call browned butter, but just browned around the edges, I'm going to add the eggs to it. And then I'll show you my basic scrambling technique. Okay, it is nicely browned around the edges there. Our dozen eggs go in. My standard procedure for this is after the first couple of minutes to start doing this slow, gentle scraping up from the bottom so that I'm allowing the uncooked egg to go down to the bottom, but I will just keep very slowly stirring. I like fairly large curds in the scrambled eggs, and I will take this off the heat or turn the heat off from underneath it when it still looks a little bit underdone, because I know the heat of the pan will continue to cook these scrambled eggs and make them just perfect. Okay, these still look a little sort of underdone on the top. I know just a little bit more in the pan will finish the cooking perfectly. So I'm really happy with this now. And now it's on to building the tortas. Our bean mixture has gotten quite thick now. If yours gets really thick, you might want to thin it with just a little bit of water. But a smear across the bottom of each one. This is sort of classic torta making, that you get that. What I call it is the thing that settles it as really a beautiful Mexican dish. So a little bit on the bottom of each one of the teleras. Last one here. Nice smear of the black beans. And then on the tops, we're going to take the chipotle. Now, this stuff is spicy and it is smoky and just kind of absolutely delicious. But you're going to have to judge how much of it you want to put on here, because everybody will be a slight bit different in what they want. But you do want to get some of this nice smokiness on here. There's another alternative that you could have to the chipotle, and that would be pickled jalapeños that you could do. But you wouldn't make a puree out of those. You would just put them on the finished sandwiches. I like to put the chipotle on the top. Now, over the base of the black beans, we're going to put a couple of crispy pieces of bacon. And then a spoonful of the scrambled egg mixture. So I've made a very luxurious egg mixture here so that we could crisp up the, oops, I forgot something. We got a little bit of cheese to go on here. We're going to put a sprinkling of cheese over the top of each one of these before we put those tops on. And now about the cheese, I didn't tell you what kind of cheese. Obviously it was a melting cheese. What I was using was a Chihuahua cheese from Supremo. But you could use any kind of mild melting cheese that you have on hand. It could be a mild cheddar, it could be a Colby, a Jack. Any of those will work. Now back to the recipe. Now the tops go onto them. And because these are oftentimes done in places, torterias, that do tortas a la plancha, where they actually cook everything on a big griddle. And then they put the teleras on there to crisp them up. I'm suggesting that we put these into the oven, let the cheese melt a little bit, but the telera will get beautifully crisp, making it, to me, the most perfect breakfast sandwich. Okay, it's been about 8 minutes or so here. These should be ready now. It's like, oh, they look so good. Okay, I've got some avocado here. I just sliced it directly down to the avocado skin, and then I'm going to lay it out there. I'll take one of these guys up here, nice and crispy. Take the top of it off. You can see the melted cheese there, and about 4 slices of avocado across there. I'm going to cut this in half. Okay. Onto a plate here. And I will just say, take a look at this. It just looks so good. So good. I think I'm just going to have a little taste of it here.